This network is devoted to the study of the unknown. Whenever possible, we use sworn statements from eyewitnesses who have chosen to come forward on their own accord. We acknowledge their testimonies as scientific evidence.
There's a good chance we're dealing with an organic creature, or we're dealing with a supernatural entity. Pterosaurs, according to evolution, have been extinct for 70 million years or so.
Our objective to research information that describes the truth about the entire cosmos.
And the name of the business is SJ Polygraph, which is directly behind me, where the examination will be taking place.
They know what meteors are, they know what planes are. And yet they say this thing looks like a pterosaur.
Welcome to Case Files. I'm your host, Jacob Esguerra. In November of 1989, deep in the remote jungles of Papua New Guinea, a woman named Harriet Sconce reported an encounter that would challenge everything we think we know about the world around us. What she saw wasn't just something unusual, it was something that shouldn't exist. A massive winged creature, silent, prehistoric, and very real. So join us now as we explore what is known as the Ropen, a mystery that lies at the very heart of our network. And perhaps you too will believe.
Before there were case files, there was an idea. In 1912, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle introduced audiences to The Lost World, a story of a remote plateau cut off from time, where prehistoric creatures still lived and breathed. A place untouched, unchanged, a place where the impossible simply continued to exist. The concept was fiction, but it planted a question that has never quite gone away. What if there are still places on this earth where time forgot to move forward? Papua New Guinea, a land of staggering beauty and overwhelming wilderness. Dense rainforests stretch for miles, broken only by jagged mountain ridges and deep river valleys carved over millennia. It is one of the most biologically diverse regions on the planet, and one of the least explored. Even today, new species are still being discovered here, hidden in the canopy, buried in the undergrowth, or isolated by terrain too difficult for modern access. In a place like this, it doesn't feel impossible that something ancient could remain unseen. Off the northeastern coast lies the island of New Britain, volcanic, rugged, alive with jungle and steep elevation changes that rise sharply from the coastline into mountainous interiors. In 1989, this island was home to small missionary communities, families who had spent decades living among the local population. Among them were the Sconce family, Marv Sconce, his wife Harriet, and their sons, Steve and Matt. They had been in the region since the 1960s, nearly 3 decades of life spent in a place far removed from the modern world. Their homes were simple, built from wood, woven grasses, and thatched materials, often reinforced with metal roofing, one of the few modern commodities that had gradually made its way into the region. Life here was quiet, routine, grounded, and for Harriet Sconce, it was familiar. November 1989. Morning. The air was already warm, carrying the layered sounds of the jungle, distant birds, insects, and the low, constant presence of wind moving through the trees. Harriet was walking a narrow path that connected her sons' homes. She had been visiting Steve. Now she was making her way to Matt's. The trail itself was not unusual for the region, but it demanded attention. To her left, dense jungle pressed in close. To her right, nothing. The land dropped away sharply, nearly 1,000 feet down to a riverbed below. The kind of drop that creates its own weather. Warm air rising, wind currents lifting steadily along the cliffside. It was the kind of place where birds could glide for long distances without ever flapping their wings. And as Harriet walked, that's exactly what she noticed. Movement.
Smile mile big.
Marv Sconce, along with his wife Harriet and their sons, served as missionaries in Papua New Guinea from 1960 to 1989. In 2012, Milt Marcy, Philip O'Donnell, and Wayne Hall conducted an interview with Harriet Sconce at her home in Washington State.
Yes, my son Steve lived on one end of the village. My son Matt lived on the other end. And to get from one home to the other, which is what I was doing, I was walking from Steve's house to Matt's house. I walked a very narrow path up above a riverbed, which as I was walking to my right, it dropped off very steeply. The river was way down.
Probably 1,000 feet or something?
Yeah, very far down.
Okay.
You wouldn't have wanted to tumble off that path.
Uh-huh.
Very high in the mountains, very high, and it was on a ridge. I left Steve's house and walked a very narrow ridge pathway. Something caught my eye to the right of me. And as I glanced over, I saw something that I had only before witnessed in books. But it had a big wingspan. It had a very sharp, long beak. I never saw it open, but a long, narrow beak. And then out the back of its head was a crest that went out the back. I was actually terrified because it was such an unusual thing, and being in a very remote village in a country like New Guinea, it was really a frightening activity for me that I saw it. I was absolutely terrified. Never approached seeing anything like that before in my life. I ran as quickly as I could to my son's house because I was absolutely terrified.
Did you notice whether the bird was following you or not? Or
I don't know, because I didn't see it until it was even with me, but about 20 feet away from me.
out over the valley?
Out over the valley of the river. And I ran into Matt's home just really frightened, and
Were they have feathers, or was it more leathery like?
had no feathers. If I was to describe it, I would say it was more like maybe snake skin.
Did you see scales, or was it just smooth?
No, it was more smooth than scales, but it had no feathers, no covering like that of any kind.
Was it shiny, or did you notice that?
It was kind of like a battleship gray color.
Did it have a crest also going back?
It had a very big crest going out the back of the head.
Okay.
I did not see a tail. He was truly soaring on the draft of the wind that he was catching.
How big would you say this creature was?
Overall, I guess, well, each wingspan, I think probably would have been 6 to 8 feet, each wing.
So it would have been like maybe 15 feet from one tip to the other
Yes,
tip.
yes.
And now, could you tell me, Steve mentioned seeing these, and Marv also. Did they had this one experience where they saw 3 of them above another river valley, and they were kind of soaring together. Did they have any other experiences where they saw pterosaurs or anything that looked like it could be a pterosaur?
Not that I know of. It was just that one time. And in fact, one of them mentioned to me they wondered if the one I saw was a young one, because the others were flying together, and it was kind of like, well, I wonder what this guy was doing straying away from the crowd. But they wondered if it might have been a young one.
I'm wondering maybe too if it could have maybe been an older male, because you know in the animal world sometimes the older males kind of don't get to be part of the family type of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Could have been. Could have been.
Something happened out there. I'm not sure how to explain it.
Tell me,
At first, it may have seemed like a large bird,
are you okay?
but almost immediately, that explanation fell apart, because what she was looking at was far too large. The creature emerged clearly into view, gliding effortlessly alongside the cliff, its wings stretched wide. There were no feathers, no visible variation in color, just a smooth, almost stone-like surface as it moved through the air. And for several moments, Harriet Sconce walked beside it. In Papua New Guinea, there is a name for creatures like this, a name passed through stories and local accounts. They are called Ropens, which translates to demon flyer. At some point, instinct took over, a realization cutting through the stillness of the moment. She was alone, on a narrow path, with a 1,000-foot drop beside her, and something that should not exist, flying within arm's reach of that open space. Encounters like this are easy to dismiss, to categorize, to explain away as misidentification, stress, or imagination. But details matter. Consistency matters. And Harriet Sconce's account, clear, measured, and specific, describes something that aligns not with modern wildlife, but with something far older, a Ropen. According to science, creatures matching this description should not exist. And yet, in one of the most remote regions on Earth, a woman walking a narrow jungle path reported something that fits that description with unsettling precision. So the question remains, not whether stories like The Lost World were fiction, but whether, in places like Papua New Guinea, they were inspired by something real.
And I was so shocked at what I saw. Never had heard of such a creature. Never had seen one before.
Special thanks to the channel Animals for Discovery, the late Milt Marcy, Philip O'Donnell, and Wayne Hall for preserving Harriet Sconce's remarkable testimony. What she described may sound unbelievable, but accounts like these continue to surface quietly, consistently, and with striking detail. Similar reports have come from explorers such as Josh Gates, Paul Nation, Dave Wetzel, Rex Yoppie, Jonathan Whitcomb, and of course the network's own Garth Guessman. So the question remains, are these just isolated stories or glimpses of something still waiting to be understood?
What are you reporting? We're in Ropen. Okay, northbound.
Set, go.
The LA
Times calls the Creation Museum a 60,000 square foot menace to 21st century scientific advancement. Vanity Fair calls it the biggest collection of kitsch in God's entire world. Architectural Record says it's more frightening than Disney's Haunted Mansion.
There are nearly 200 natural history museums across America that teach evolution. So why is the media so hateful to our museum that teaches creation from a biblical perspective? Think for yourself and prepare to believe.
In cultures across North America, stories of the Thunderbird have endured for generations. Massive winged beings said to command the skies above. Powerful, mysterious, and very real to those who've encountered them. In part 2 of our conversation, we sit down once again with Brian Price, Navajo, former Navy SEAL, wind talker, and accomplished Hollywood producer. Together, we go deeper into exploring the legends that he may know of these flying reptile accounts and the connections that may exist between ancient stories and modern encounters that could take us even further into the unknown. This is part 2 with Brian Price on the Ropen Network. Brian, I've heard about Thunderbirds and Pterosaurs all my life, like creatures on your reservation. How do you interpret these beings? Do you believe they are remnants of God's ancient creation or something spiritual? Beings that exist between worlds, maybe, perhaps? Shed some light for us a little bit. What you personally think?
Yeah, thank you. I personally think that they're remnants of God's creation. There's a lot of different stories from my reservation. So I come from the Navajo reservation, and that's the biggest reservation in the United States. It's about the size of West Virginia. We have our own government, judicial, legislative, executive branch, our own president, our own police force, all that stuff. So it's basically like its own country within the United States borders, as big as West Virginia. And there's a lot of things on a reservation that are very ancient, like the Grand Canyon is very ancient.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, there's a lot of stuff out there, but I think that they're left over from God's creation. I do think that, dinosaur, the word dinosaur was introduced a couple hundred years ago, but before that it was dragon.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's paintings from the Renaissance times of people riding like long-necked dinosaurs into battle. And there's lots of declassified files at the Smithsonian. You can go online and read all this stuff about, quote, dragons or big things swooping down and, attacking a train in 1890 in the West. And so, like, these things have always been here. And I think that part of it's spiritual, but I do think that they are physically created either by God or remnants of, tampering with.
Okay.
From other deities.
This is where I've got to ask that question then. When we bring up Thunderbirds, we've talked about this in the past with the famous cryptozoologist Ken Gerhardt, and he's done a lot of work with Thunderbird accounts. So it comes to my attention that some of the tribal nations are affiliated. They actually compile them in both of these type of creatures together, because you see them depicted on totems where they have a head crest.
Yeah.
Avian types just don't have head crests unless they're feathers. We haven't found anything that depicts a strong bone other than a flying reptile. So am I wrong here, Brian? Is it true that some of these nations actually depict the Pterosaur family as a Thunderbird as well? Is this correct from what you know?
Yeah, from what I know on my reservation, Thunderbird is like an interchangeable term. Because like I said, we've heard about the Pterosaurs on my reservation. There was a picture of one 5 or 6 years ago. And it was kind of being passed around the reservation, like, oh my gosh, there's a Thunderbird, they're back. And it was a pterodactyl, it was a Pterosaur. And I don't know where the photo went. This was like a while ago. But then I've also heard of like, hey, like the Thunderbirds, like don't go near Devil's Butte or don't go near this butte or this canyon because they'll swoop up and eat children. And they're like big, huge winged condor things, but they're both called Thunderbirds interchangeably where I'm from.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't know if all the nations are on par with this, but I think a good amount of them.
Yeah, all of us have like kind of different beliefs and stuff. Like I know, like where we're at, they're like, hey, don't mess with the Thunderbirds. Like don't go over there. But then I know some tribes in British Columbia, and they think a Thunderbird is like, this is like bravery and like it's there to protect you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's like the antithesis of what we're thinking they are. So, like I said, you're growing up on the reservation, going to, I did the powwow circuit when I was younger, so I got to really, expand my horizons on meeting new tribes and meeting other nations and things like that from a First Nations perspective. And we all kind of talk about this, and it's supposed to be hush hush, and you're eating your fry bread at the powwow, but everyone's kind of talking and just, well, what's going on? I heard this, I heard that. So I've heard lots of things, but like I said, I've never personally seen a Thunderbird.
Okay.
But my grandmother, she died in like 2016, 2017, and she was like triple digits. She was over 100. They actually lost her birth certificate, but it was passed down. So she was born in like 1910s. And there was stories of her saying when she was little, like, yeah, they would have to stay away because like they would literally steal the children away. And it was like a big, huge bird. But then again, there was another account like 5 or 6 years ago where they had a picture of it, and it was a Pterosaur. It wasn't a bird with feathers. So Grandma saw the feathered bird, Thunderbird, and then this other guy in the picture had a Pterosaur. So from my understanding, they're kind of interchangeable. But again, I've never personally seen one, but there's legends everywhere, and there's like the underground cities in the Grand Canyon and things like that, and there's all these different understandings and ideas. But again, there's so much misinformation flying around. There's so much, they got a hold of history books, and then they rewrote a history and then taught that, versus what actually happened. So it's hard for me to decipher, which is, why I'm happy talking to the expert. Thanks for having me.
Well, no, I mean, I love getting an understanding from someone who is part of the nations. Okay, because maybe you hear more than we do. Now, I've talked to the nations out in Washington State. It's interesting. Here in Oregon, we just don't have many accounts of pterosaurs. Maybe along the Columbia River Gorge, but it's mostly going to be our neighboring state, which is Washington. And of course, all the other ones, mid-states, Texas, Florida, Arkansas, North Carolina, you name it. It's just Oregon, not really the environment for them unless you head further north. And so the fact that you mentioned family members, too, that have some familiarity with these things. Let me ask you this question then, Brian. Do you happen to know if these creatures appear connected to certain landscapes, weather patterns, or maybe sacred Navajo places?
Yeah, for us, they're saying like stay away from, like, be careful when you're around the canyons.
Okay.
Because like there's like ancient cities and stuff down there in the canyons. The U.S. government like has security guards and stuff on all the canyons on the reservation out there, including the Grand Canyon, especially the Grand Canyon. And you're not allowed to go in certain areas, and it's like because there's an underground city down there. And so it's like, well, where are these things coming from? They're not just flying around the world. Where are they at? Are they going down and like roosting in this cave in this underground city? Why are these people standing there with guns and telling you to turn around? And we're Native American. I'm Navajo. That's like our ancestral land. We've been here 1,000 years. Like you're telling us we can't even go explore our own land on our own reservation, and we're a sovereign nation, but the U.S. government has people with guns standing there. So they could be roosting possibly like in this cave system in this ancient underground city that used to be there. They're also saying don't go around the buttes because it's like I heard this when I was younger. My grandfather, his name is George. He died. We went to his funeral, and they had to hold the funeral at a certain time of day and clear everyone out because the funeral was near his ancestral home, which was near this really big butte. And this butte had a legend of like Thunderbirds would roost up there. And when my grandma was little, the kids would be playing, and the Thunderbird would swoop down, take him up, and they would take him up to its nest, 500 meters up on top of this butte, and it would eat the kids. And so I mean, around buttes, around canyons, they're like, hey, just be careful about that kind of stuff. And so we were always told to just watch out if we're going to play around those areas. Like we need to be careful and we need to keep an eye out because the birds will come and snatch you.
So George is adamant about this. This was just not a story to him. This was actual fact. The danger.
Yeah, he was like, hey, don't do that. Like they'll swoop people. They ate people before.
Yeah, I'll go one step further and say that the asteroid did not happen. Sorry. Now, instead, I believe there was a huge catastrophe called a global flood. and that a lot of
That
these
sounds
creatures were brought back on the ark as infants because they're far more manageable. If you ever go to the Ark Encounter in Kentucky,
I've heard about that place. I haven't gone yet. They have dinosaurs on the ship, right?
Yeah, they do. They do. They even have pterosaurs, and
Yeah.
you know,
People
Dr.
think
Ken
that's
Ham's
like the
amazing.
craziest thing, and I'm like, bro, like, dude, read the book, man. It's in the book.
Yeah.
The Bible. Yeah, and it's just like, of course they're going to hide all the archaeological proof and evidence. You know what I mean? Because who owns the media? You know, the bad guys. You know, wink, wink, whatever you want to say. But it's just so they're going to cut out the actual truth of the archaeological evidence that proves all the biblical stuff is true.
Now, having served in the military, do you believe certain branches of government or powerful groups already know about this phenomena, but keep silent? What's your thoughts on that, Brian?
Yeah, my thoughts on that. You know, merely an opinion, but I think that the world government is aware of all this stuff, and I think that they're, you know, telling a history that benefits the people in charge, just like they did with, you know, the blacks, whites, and natives all being over here before colonialism. Like we all know that. I mean, you know, I live out here in LA, and the other day I was like, "Hey, can I ask you a question?" And I with an African American person, and because we're neighbors, and he's like, "Yeah, what's up?" And I was like, "Do you know that black people were here before?" You know? He's like, "Oh yeah, we know that, but no one listens to us." And I was like, "No one listens to us either. I'm native. What's up, bro?" And it's like we knew the whole time. You know, and there was, like I said, there's already white people over here too. So this whole narrative about like, oh, hey, the evil Christian white man came over and destroyed these poor cultures. It's like, bro, like, enough. Yeah. People are waking up.
Let's come back here for a moment. I know you're curious by this phenomenon, and it doesn't just tie into pterosaurs. There's other things too. We talked about, you know, this field tends to get more visibility when it's dealing with the Sasquatch or the Bigfoot or the Yeti, the skunk ape. I understand that. There's so many researchers devoted to that type of creature. But there's other things out here in this world too that defy logic, such as a living, breathing werewolf, which we refer to as the dog man. There are reptiloids, lizard men that have been seen as well.
Yeah.
Anything that seems to be part man, part animal, anatomically incorrect, but it's there. I think borderline is a super soldier or genetic experimentation or just maybe quite possibly the supernatural. You touched on something about the Sasquatch that others have talked about too. It tends to be more here one minute, gone the next. And that's why we're not getting very good, solid evidence. I mean, we got prints, we got tracks, characteristics of these creatures. Yeah. Being Navajo, can you enlighten me a little bit more? Do you happen to know anything about these other types before I jump back into pterosaur?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. Okay, so on our reservation, again, when 2018, I think, and by Window Rock, which is our capital for the Navajo Nation, someone saw a Bigfoot. And the whole reservation was like, it's back, the Bigfoots are back, but it disappeared. And so the way we view them is we view them as they're interdimensional. They're forest demons is what we call them. Yeah, and they have the ability to kind of shift and phase in and out of other dimensional space. But then there's supposed to be two types. There's one that actually has the ability to shift through the dimensional space. And that's why they can appear and disappear so quickly. And that's why you always get that funky smell. Like I said, death has a smell, a very specific smell, the spirit of death. You can smell it on people. You know what it is. It's not BO. It's bleeding out from the spirit realm down to the third dimensional plane. But then there's also the type of Bigfoot that doesn't phase, and it's like permanently here in the physical world, and it lives and hides where it lives and hides, potentially underground or whatever. But there's a lot of things in, like I said, Vietnam. My real father, my biological father, didn't serve the military. He was Christian. And then my stepfather, because my mother remarried, he was a POW in Vietnam. He was a helicopter pilot for the Marine Corps, and he got shot down. It was a POW for 18 months. And then he escaped one night, and literally 3 months crawling on his belly through the mud at night, made it back to Blue Lines. became a stepdad. And he was saying that people, and he was hearing stories when he was in Vietnam of like GIs going in and other pilots saying like, yeah, there's just like these Bigfoot ape looking things on top of the trees when we were landing, but it wasn't an orangutan. It wasn't, they were like, it looked like a Sasquatch. Yeah. And it's like, well, and, you know, and then you're like, oh, it's just a Gigantopithecus that's like left over because the jungle's so dense. And then I'm like, well, at the same time, it's just like we're hearing stories about that kind of stuff on my reservation as well. And then you get the Yeti and you got them from all these other places. So, I mean, it's a lot of mystery, but the one that we most commonly refer to and understand on the Navajo reservation.
Interesting
is
that they know
Bigfoot
about
that.
that.
Can phase in and
Phasing
out dimensions.
out.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Well, they say there's two different types. That's what I believe. I believe that there is one that has the ability to be interdimensionally, like shift through the veil and disappear and appear at will where it needs to. And then I think that there's one that's permanently here. I think there's two different types, and I do believe in them. I do believe they're here.
Yeah,
they're real. As well as the Pterosaurs. I think all these things are real. They're just hidden.
My thought
They're hidden
process
because
on
they need
the
them to be hidden.
bipedal beings, whether it be Sasquatch or Dogman, you name it, I think it's all just is a trickery, unfortunately. It's tampering with God's creation. Anything that is part man, part beast is a violation of his law.
Yeah, it houses the disembodied spirits of the demons because they need something to physically act in. And then
I agree.
the Talls.
So I wonder then,
those are actually
why
fallen angels.
part man, part beast? What is the point? And that's why I come back to Super Soldier. Is this tied into Revelations? Is this tied in the end times? Hunters that would seek out the ones who call themselves Christians? Just a theory. I'm totally wrong. Might be wrong.
Oh, yeah. We're just spitballing here. These are good, really good insights. No one's ever asked me that question, but I do believe that end times will be in this
We're
century.
experiencing some of it, aren't we?
I mean, everything's lined up.
Yeah.
I mean, we're starting. I do believe we're getting towards the end of things here, legitimately, or at least the end of the era. You know.
Yeah.
That's what the Bible says. Like the story of God from beginning to end of the age. You know, if you know who God is and you're willing to submit to Him, and I promise it's the best thing you'll ever do, you don't got to worry about all that stuff. You know, but if you're unsure, I would suggest anyone just, you know, take a minute to humble yourself. I had to do it. It was hard. You know, but it's your eternal soul. You know, like this is the blink of an eye in an eternal lifespan, this life.
Yep.
That's the truth. Native Americans know that as well, even on our own theological understanding of our own culture. Like it's important.
I think every
because I do believe that you're getting towards the end of it. The signs, all the signs are there, all the technology's there.
After all you've lived, from combat to cinema to the unseen, what truths have you found bridging science, spirit, and experience?
There is a creator of everything. That creator is benevolent. And that creator loves you. And he wants to be an intimate part of your life because you are a child of that creator. And out of all my experience of the supernatural, Ivy League astrophysics, Hollywood, being around secret society people and everything else that you get involved with when you're in show business or you're around in show business and then working as a SEAL during wartime at a really high level, going to all the secret bases, doing all the secret stuff. Every single thing points back to the one answer that I was saying earlier. Every rabbit hole leads to the same answer. That Jesus is the answer. Like Jesus is God in a human form. The Spirit of God the Father is inside the vessel of the third dimensional being that is Jesus. So Jesus is God in human form. Every single answer I've ever looked at, and I was such an atheist, I was so angry and so bitter. I've had so many knockdown, drag out, chewing, cussing at Jesus in my room, mad at stuff. You know, asked a demon for help instead of Jesus for help because I was so mad. I was like, oh yeah, F you, I'm not going to ask you, I'm going to go ask your enemy because he'll help me because you won't do nothing for me. You know, after I've been through all of it. I was an atheist, everything.
That means a lot
right
coming
now,
from
Jesus is the answer.
Yeah. You've been there. Finally, when the world looks back at Brian William Price, how would you like to be remembered? As a soldier, an actor, or a seer? Or maybe the messenger? Maybe the messenger itself.
The first word that comes to mind is servant. I've tried to spend my whole life in service because I genuinely love people. And some people are harder to love than others. And I've failed miserably at doing that.
Mm-hmm.
More times than I'd like to admit. But it's...
I like that. That's rare.
Yeah, servant.
I think that as we grow and progress, we get stronger and we realize what we're really here for.
Yeah.
I've taken a lot of your time. I know we went a lot longer, but this, like I said, this was part 2 as well. So I think you'll enjoy what we have to show you, and keep up the great work. You're a blessing in your field. Anytime you want to reach out to me, I'll always be here, especially if you have more to share with me and I have more to share with you. You have a great rest of your weekend, sir.
Yeah, thank you. You too. See ya.
Seeing what we hope for is a living pterosaur.
In July of 2025, Josiah Moore and Peter Beach led a focused investigation along the Yakima River, surveying both low and elevated terrain for reported pterosaur activity. Through disciplined night operations and extended fieldwork, Moore documented notable avian behavior across the river system. Their work adds compelling observational insights to this developing field, and we recognize their contributions with sincere appreciation. As we close, we extend our thanks to Brian Price for his time, his insight, and for sharing his experiences and knowledge with us. From his service as a Navy SEAL to his Navajo roots and the testimony of his faith, his perspective offers a rare and meaningful bridge between legend and reality. And as these stories continue to unfold, we're reminded that some truths are still waiting to be discovered. Oh yes. Until next time, keep your eyes on the sky and seek the truth.